Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another ranked ladder game. This time around, we will have LasH facing off against VortiX. This is the Smurf account of VortiX called Non-Boiling Oil, which is a nice little tongue twister. We're just going to call him VortiX, though. He's going to be playing as the Ottomans in blue to the north, and to the south, we will have LasH playing as the French in green. Now, this is a very intriguing matchup, especially because as good as these civilizations are in 1v1, it's not something that you commonly see. We'll have to talk about that in a second, but we do have a military school coming in here for VortiX, so that's probably our first talking point of the game. Now, when you look at the French, one of their biggest weaknesses against civilizations that can and will attack you in Dark Age, talk about Mongols, talk about English with the men-at-arms, talk about the Ottomans potentially. These civilizations are able to harass or deny your gold, and even though they cannot prevent you from getting into Feudal Age, they can slow down your progression towards knights, maybe even outright deny your ability to pop out a knight when you get to Feudal Age. And that's one of the more concerning things for a French player, and it's definitely a scenario in which the French feel vulnerable. So these are probably the civilizations against which the French struggle the most at the beginning of Feudal Age. Now, VortiX opted to go for the military school, which is the slower-paced opening with the Ottomans. It's going to take some time until the spearman is made, and of course, it's going to take some time until it gets to the other side of the map, meaning that LasH is going to have enough time to collect the gold he needs for a knight. Now, if VortiX opted to go for a barracks, he could have harassed this gold mine a lot sooner, but obviously, it would have been a bigger investment because he would have had to pay the full price for the spearman. And here, of course, he's getting that spearman for free. Plus, once the spearman is made, a new one is going to be queued up. So that long-term build-up of Ottoman forces will start right in the beginning of Dark Age. School of Cavalry on the way here for LasH, no surprise about that one. But one of the more interesting things to look at is that he's building this with 5 vills. Most of the time you see players committing 4, sometimes even only 3 villagers to the landmark. So 5 is definitely a sign of LasH wanting to get to Feudal Age as soon as possible. He simply cannot justify committing more, because obviously he needs to collect the food and gold he needs for a knight. But this is definitely an expedited pace when it comes to aging up for LasH. Other side, the Twin Minaret coming in here for VortiX, no surprise in that front either. He's playing with 1 scout, just like LasH. Scouts will spot each other, but here comes the Spearman. Eats a lot of TC fire. Even gets killed here. That's a big loss for VortiX. It seems very likely that he didn't scout the TC as he was moving up with the Spearman. He was probably looking for sheep. In fact, we can take a look at his perspective, and indeed, this is the case. So he was looking for sheep. You see all these areas scouted. But because of that, he didn't know where the TC was from LasH. Now, obviously, losing a free Spearman is not a catastrophic loss, but it definitely hinders his ability to harass these early gold miners, and it makes this early game a lot safer for LasH. Twin Minaret on the way, first knight queued up by LasH. Needless to say is the fact that LasH is going to need a range as soon as possible, because he saw the spearmen coming, there will be more coming to accompany those guys. We're likely going to see a mix of archers, Sipahis, spearmen for VortiX. Likely when he gets to Feudal Age, he's going to switch the military schools to Sipahis. But whichever the case, there will be spearmen mixed in by VortiX. If for nothing else, then just to counter the knights. So you need something that deals with those spears. A range should be needed here from LasH. For now, VortiX is going to play a defensive game though. He hasn't yet shifted his military school from the spearman to the Sipahi, because one of the things that he wants to get out is a couple of spears to prevent those knights from harassing him. You see, he even pulled the villagers from gold. He's respecting his opponent's ability to hit that gold, potentially get away with a villager pick. Now, LasH doesn't have his scout accompanying this knight, and as much as LasH wasn't scouted at the beginning, neither did LasH scout the opponent's base. You see, he's kind of going in blind over there. He's going to bump into the gold. Kind of a lot. Actually, never mind. I was about to say that he is going to get lucky to find that gold, but that's not the case. He doesn't see the gold. Now, once the scout and the knight link up, it's going to be a lot easier for LasH to acquire targets. But this is part of the reason why you often see players grouping up the knight with the initial scout. That scout is the tool that helps you acquire the targets, and of course the knight is the one that helps you kill them. Military school now shifted towards the Sipahi. Heavy commitment to stone from VortiX. This is way more than what you need just to get a military school going. You have the gut feeling that this could go towards a second TC build. It would be crazy. Ottomans aren't a civilization that you very commonly associate with 2 TC defensive gameplay. It's not unprecedented, especially because they do get the free units out there, so a long defensive game is something that they can play into. Especially if the opposing French player isn't playing aggressive either. LasH is playing on 2 TCs as well, which is actually benefiting VortiX here, I feel. If LasH played aggressive, he could easily punish an Ottoman player that only has 1 military school and a single barracks that's not producing anything. If LasH had archers by now, these stone miners would be harassed. These lumberjacks would possibly be harassed. But because LasH is playing on a second TC, or he will soon have a second TC, it means that he isn't going to have the opportunity to punish VortiX. Means that VortiX can get away with 2 TCs on his own. And it also means that the game is going to be a little slower. And that helps a lot, really leveraging these military schools. The longer the game goes, the more beneficial these buildings are. And this is the perfect scenario for VortiX to be in. Now, obviously, LasH is going to have a minor villager lead from the faster working TCs of the French. He's also going to have his second TC up a little sooner than his opponent will. But that by itself won't compensate for the fact that VortiX will have the military schools popping out units. Love to see how he's still producing spears over here, still respecting LasH's ability to punish with some knights. And you see LasH is camping down this area with the scout. He wants to know what's up, sees the stable, and this is a critical sign. The moment you see that stable, you feel like LasH wants, or that VortiX wants to switch into probably a lot of aggression. Here's the thing. When you have these military schools, that's the best way to acquire Sipahi, because Sipahi are pricey, and you get them for free on the military schools. If an Ottoman player is willing to commit to a stable, that means that the Ottoman player is willing to commit to mass-producing Sipahi, not just from the military schools, but also from the stable. And because Sipahi are so pricey, that's kind of a sign that's telling you, hey, he's probably going to try and play very aggressive because he's willing to sacrifice a lot of resources to get units on the field. LasH is grabbing survival techniques. Love that tech, especially for the French. Very cheap. It's going to give you a massive boost to your hunters. Just look at that, 15% getter rate boost for a tech that costs less than 100 resources. One of the more, I'm not going to say underappreciated techs, because that's no longer true, but it's definitely one of the nicest and most cost-efficient technologies, especially if you have villagers on the hunt. Obviously, if you're not hunting, it's not a thing, but it's definitely a valuable tech to get. Spears will chase away LasH. He's mixing in archers, but they are still all the way back home. Spears also being added by LasH. I like this move a lot from LasH. I think, in this case, he needs to commit heavily to the spears. Knights and spears will beat the spear plus Sipahi combination, especially if you have a handful of archers to help out against the opposing spears. And you see, this is going to force VortiX to mix in some archers. Double range is now coming up. Both players on 2 TCs. LasH has a tiny villager lead, and he's still mining stone. So his game plan going into this game is to just out-eco the Ottoman player. He saw the second TC, he's going to say, okay, that means I need a third. But I kind of dislike this, I have to say. The issue here is that, as I said, the more passive the game is, the better it is for the Ottomans. You see, now VortiX has a lead when it comes to the army, and it will just get better and better. If VortiX is able to just chill, sit back, get to Castle Age, unlock a new military school, get some meters on the field, build up those Sipahi numbers, it's going to be so difficult to stop with the French. Third TC on the way. Was cancelled for a moment by LasH. He's going to replace it to the front of his gold mine. Sipahi now swooping in. LasH has limited vision towards the north. This is a great angle to strike from. You see he's actually dropping a house over here, making it a little bit more difficult for the enemy cavalry to just flank in and surprise him. You have to squeeze those units through these little holes. Gives you a split second more of breathing room, but there is the Sipahi raid. One villager will fall. And now LasH is going to have to play catch-up. This is why I was so concerned for LasH's position here. I like that he's going castle, although he actually is doubling down on knights. For a moment I thought he was going to go castle with all the food and gold he stacked up. But that doesn't seem to be the case. If he went castle, that would be an intriguing idea. It's risky because Ottomans can always punish you. Especially now that we're getting to the stage where the military buildup is rather rapid. But if you go Castle Age, you will possibly unlock royal bloodlines, and that could be a big power spike to your knights. He's got a lot of knights, though. It's something that VortiX will have to respect. He does get a second villager pick to the north. Love the Vols from LasH, by the way. He's going to try and make sure that the Sipahi cannot just outmaneuver him. Obviously, these bad boys are super fast. 1.75 speed when buffed by the meter. On the other side, 1.62 only for the knights. So knights will never catch them, and this is something that VortiX is trying to use. Third military school now coming in. And this is the alarming thing right now for LasH. He's not doing anything bad, quote-unquote. But the problem is that the return of investment on the third TC for LasH is much slower than the return of investment is on these military schools. Especially because these bad boys have been working for a while. Now VortiX is starting to see that investment come back in the form of Sipahi. Whereas the third TC, it just now has been finished. You see, it's not like LasH has a gigantic villager lead as a result of this. And on the other side, VortiX is now thinking about Castle Age. He's outnumbering his opponent almost 2-1. And when he gets to Castle, there will be more military schools. There will be relics picked up. There will be critical techs acquired. And I think that's the window that VortiX is working towards. Now for VortiX, one of the interesting things to do would be to start mining stone again and work towards a keep. Imperial Armory will be on the way. But in a more recent patch, we've seen keeps being nerfed. They're no longer as powerful as they used to be. But they are still a good tool of securing ground. And if VortiX gets to Castle Age, has this formidable army, secures this fourth position and drops a keep somewhere around here, it's going to be a very difficult position for LasH to come back from. Love the walls. It's going to make it more difficult for VortiX to punish, but he is getting away with a couple of villager picks. Just makes life so annoying for LasH. He's trying to build up a villager lead, now has a lead of 6, but he lost a villager here and there, and that's obviously hindering his progress and hindering the pace, slowing down the pace at which he's building up that villager lead. And now Castle Age is in. Now, if there's any civilization that doesn't mind being behind into Castle Age, it's probably the French. But you have to be very cautious here, because as I said, escalation from now on for the Ottomans is extremely rapid. In fact, you see veterancy for the archers coming in here for VortiX. He isn't even prioritizing the Sipahi now. It's gonna be archers. Other thing that would be lovely to see from him would be crossbows, or, you know, you could even make a case for Janissaries. Probably not immediately, but long term, if VortiX started mixing in Janissaries, that would be extremely difficult for LasH to deal with. Most of LasH's army is knights and spearmen. Spearmen, they probably get picked by Janissaries. It's not the best fight ever for the Janis, but as long as they have a meat shield, it's going to be very cost efficient. And the Knights get shredded by those Jennies. So once you have the option to go for Janissaries here for VortiX, it's definitely something that he should go for. In fact, he has popped out 10 of them already. I keep forgetting that you can go for that button and give you 10 Janissaries. That's scary. That's very scary. Even if these were Castle Age Knights, the Janissaries would shred them, but now they're only Feudal Age. Was being broken through. Janissaries, Spearmen now moving up. If you had a Castle Age right now for LasH, you could maybe have some Mangonels to deal with these guys, but without, it's impossible. I hate to say this, but this is one of those cases where LasH has absolutely no tools to deal with this. This is one of those cases where things have just escalated to the point where there is no coming back from. Janissaries will shred all the Knights. You see Spearmen also fall to the Archers, to the Knights, or to the Janissaries, beg your pardon. Villagers will be picked. They are trying to desperately save that town center as Castle Age is coming in for LasH. Guildhall is the landmark of choice. All the Knights have fallen, so getting Royal Bloodlines wouldn't do any good anyways. But this is just pure desperation at this point for LasH. He's fleeing for his life. VortiX will clean up the vills. Villager lead has disappeared. And we are seeing a pristine example to why you really need to play aggressive against the Ottomans. They won't beat you with their economy. They will beat you with those free units that they are getting and just that slow but very powerful escalation of an army. It's not like VortiX was committing a lot of resources to making this army. It's more about the fact that he didn't lose a single unit for 15 minutes. All of the spearmen that he made ever since Dark Age, the ones that he got for free from the military schools, they're still alive. And of course he can accompany them with these Janissaries now. Great tool to deal with the French cavalry. Meteors out there to buff them. And then there is always that escalation. Lancers now moving in for some extra tankiness, some extra damage output. Sipahi still out there to harass. And we even have some Imams out there for VortiX. He's going to start collecting relics. Villagers now trying to get a gate up, but it is to no avail. Most of them will fall before the gate is completed. This little expansion is also cleaned up. LasH has now lost 27 vills, and he is going to tap out of this one. Great example of how to use and exploit a passive game from the opponent by VortiX here, using the Ottomans. You are given all the time in the world to use those military schools to build up a force, and then just unleash them with a great timing attack. Love to see the early mix-in of Janissaries as well from VortiX. Allowed him to have a decisive advantage against those Knights. Even without the Janissaries, I think he would have won those fights, but with the Jennies, there was just no question. On the other side for LasH, I think the issue I saw, at least from my perspective, from this outside perspective, seeing everything, obviously players do not see everything like we do, but I think the issue was that the third TC is something that didn't pay off. By the time it was completed, VortiX got what he wanted from the military schools, and you never really saw that third town center coming into play for LasH. In exchange, Castle Age was sacrificed, so there was no way to mix in Mangonels or any tool that deals with those Janissaries or the Archers, and in the end, the Ottoman war machine just stampedes the army of the French, and VortiX secures the game.